Good morning. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, November 14th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Can I do it? Come on. Oh, I forgot to be here today. I asked for the wrong
We
one.
have 21 present.
Today.
Thank you. Adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we're moving into the public hearing on the budget. The purpose of the hearing is to allow the public an opportunity to present suggestions and comments on the Door County budget for 2018 as proposed by the Administrator and Finance Director, approved by the Finance Committee, and submitted for action later today by the Board of Supervisors per 65.90 Wisconsin statutes. Has anybody signed up to speak?
Get the coffee, get the open the meeting, and let's call it 3 times a week. Like, just like your, like that.
Okay. So,
Yep, yep.
does anybody from the public care to make a comment about the proposed budget? I have to ask 3 times. Does anybody from the public care to make a comment about the proposed 2018 budget? Last and final opportunity. Does anybody in the public care to make a comment about the 2018 proposed budget? Hearing no requests for comments, I would declare that the hearing is completed and there's no further public comment. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing on the budget is closed. I'd like to call to order the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting, approximately 9:07 a.m. on Tuesday, November 14th. Have a roll call, please.
Oops.
Nobody's left. We have 21 present. Very good. Correspondence. I'm sorry, presentation of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence.
Mr. Chair?
Susan.
In your last packet in October, you saw the letter that the Legislative Committee sent regarding the SALT state and local tax deductions. I've gotten 2 emails from Kyle Christensen to let me know that, and you've probably been watching the news, but right now, the House version of the tax reform bill includes up to $10,000 deduction for SALT. The Senate version of the bill includes no deductions at all, does away with SALT. So what he's sharing is that it's very fluid. He expects, or the people are telling him, that there will be some form of compromise. So if you haven't considered contacting your senators and Congressman Gallagher, now would be the time to do it, to share your concerns.
Mr. Fisher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if it's not out of line, I'd like to take this time to welcome back Supervisor Cook to the fold.
Yes.
I am the walking wounded, I guess. Good to be back, but time will tell for how long.
Well, it's good to have you. Anything else under correspondence? We are now going to adjourn as a county board and convene in the annual budget session. So we are now in the budget session. I'm sorry, another one?
Grant, do we need a formal motion for that?
We need to adjourn.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it by voice vote.
So we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now we'll reconvene into the budget session. I agree, it's confusing.
Okay, I thought it'd just be easier if I stood up and I can just kind of talk through the budget a little bit. I think it's just important just to provide just a general overview. And if you have specific questions, obviously myself or Mark or various department heads are available if there are certain questions. I think I'd like this to start on page 3 of your budget book, because I think that gives you the best picture of kind of where we're at today. And I'm just going to walk through some of the basic numbers, and then I'll jump around a little bit, but just walk through the basic part. So if you look at right in the middle of the page, just to kind of explain how we build the budget and where we are with the levy limit. So if you look at our 2017, it shows you on the far right, I guess, what we have our tax levy capacity. You can see that it's 23,997,131. From that, we can add our percent of our net new construction. So again, then that is a 1.003%. So that gives you that 240,691. So you get that, and you add up with your 2018, that's our tax levy limit. Then if you look at items that are, I guess, could be added on to your overall expenses, there's our 2015, our debt refunding for that, and there's our related payment, just over $2 million. You'll see now that we also add in our 2017 debt for our community center / emergency services building. Then we can add on the bridge aid, and then we have our total expenses for our emergency services department. So that gives you a total tax levy of that $29,959,296. So again, just below, then it shows you that increase of about 2.27%. And then I'm looking at the tax rate. Then your tax rate, our new tax rate went from about $4.06 to $4.12. Again, we got to carry that out the full 9 digits, but it ends up being a 1.53%. The one thing to point out with our budget is that we are still not, I guess, taxing to our full capacity. We still have about $1 million in capacity that's available to us to, I guess, tax if we would so choose. In building this budget, we're trying to be responsible in terms of how we're building our budget, and we're, I guess, in essence, naturally growing into, I guess, that capacity. So by next year, at this time, we'll almost be at 100% of that full taxing capacity. So again, I guess what I'm trying to explain to you is that technically by the books of the letter of the state law, as far as the levy limits, we're actually underneath what we could actually be taxing in terms of our levy limit, but we're not taking advantage of that this year, but we still have the opportunity to grow into that. Traditionally, if you didn't do it, you'd lose it. But since this is considered where we got this excess is really from the transfer over of our debt, that allows you to actually grow into that over a period of time. So we're taking advantage of that and growing into it responsibly. So that covers the initial summary. I guess on the next page, page 204, I won't go through all of these because there's another table I'll go through too, but that just gives you a general idea in terms of the changes between the majority of the departments. I think the biggest thing that you'll see is there's some minor modifications, mainly from really the changes is reallocating the cost of the county board, I guess, expenses for the committees themselves. So that was taken from the county board budget and allocated to the departments. There are obviously some other changes that we did discuss, and I can go through those if you'd like. But for right now, I think everyone's seen the percentage of changes per department. I guess turning the page, we do talk about our debt service. Again, that was on that first page, but I do want to highlight our debt service. Again, that's about $2.3 million, and again, that accounts for our refinancing and now our new project that's coming online. Again, just wanted to point that out. Things that I guess where I just want to point out as far as positives. Again, we continue to be in a strong position in regards to, I guess with our retirement rates, we're getting all of our, I guess, units. This is the last year in terms of our contract, so all of our units now will be at least paying their portion of the WRS. So that continues. That was one of the things that we worked on before, so that puts us in a good position. Likewise, on our medical benefits for our employees, we've done very well with managing our expenses and managing just some tweaks to how we provide our services. But again, we continue to remain flat in terms of our expenses for providing medical benefits, and our funds remain strong. So we're in a very good position for that. This last page, just wanted to point out two other things that to me are significant. One is our workers' compensation. We continue to do well. Workers' comp is somewhat based off our claim history, which means, and we've gotten good renewal rates, which means we're managing or training well, so we're not having significant claims. So that continues to be strong as far as that fund balance, and we actually, I'll point out that we actually drew $100,000 out of that just in terms of for the budget itself. And then the last thing on that page is also just to point out the capital projects. Again, that's just kind of a summary from the CIP that's located in the back of the budget. I'll point that out, but I just wanted again to highlight the projects that are identified for the 2018 budget. So with that, let me just jump around a little bit on you, just to point out what I think are significant pages for you to be familiar with. The first one would be jumping to page 10 and 11 of your book. I think that chart's important to understand, mainly because it's showing you a trend of how the budgets are changing over a period of time. Again, it shows you the 2016 adopted versus the 2017, and then versus the 2018 proposed. And again, you'll see that the percentages on percent change actually matched my staff memo. But again, I think it's a good way for you to understand the comparisons in terms of our budgets and how it's working within the departments themselves. I guess one thing that's been a constant question through the committee meetings, and not to point out one department, but I'm going to. Since Joe's in the back, I'll pick on him. But under our human services, you'll see an increase of 4.26%. And again, there's been questions on, okay, we added those positions, and Ken said that there was no impact of adding those positions. What we did this year is in human services, if you can imagine it, they're a little bit what I would call a hybrid department, in that in some ways they act as an enterprise. So when they do their billing, so if they treat a client, let's say I was going in for service, they can actually bill for the service they're providing for me. The way they can bill for it is they can bill for the staff time, but they can also bill for all the indirect costs. So that includes the phones, the square footage space, software that they use, and so forth. So a lot of those expenses, we actually had those in our IS budget. So to make that, I guess, easier for us to account for those expenses, we drew those expenses out of IS and we put it into human services. It's a net zero change in the budget. In other words, the expense is there either way, but we're actually putting it where the cost is occurring, because this is one place where we can actually recapture those costs. So that's where you're actually seeing that increase, because we transferred probably about $120,000 of new expenses into human services just to be able to do for that. So I just wanted to explain that, because that's been one of those questions that's been pretty constant throughout in terms of that. In terms of other items that's moving forward, so again, that gives you the comparison again year by year. Again, you'll see at the bottom, it gives you the totals, and it shows you the percentages in terms of how that works in terms of the percentage increases. Again, you'll see that 1.53% increase on the bottom as well. On page 12 of your packet, that's just the standard notice. That puts it in a condensed form, the big book, into what's considered as part of the notice. So you'll see how those are broken down into categories, but again, most of those numbers again correspond to what you've seen on the previous pages, but I just wanted to point that out. I do want to just jump now just to some charts that I think are significant to point out. The next one is page 20 of your budget book. I think it's just important to point out, oh, sorry, Dan?
Yeah, I got a question. You say we're $1 million under the levy limit, round figures, right?
Correct.
Right now, okay. And our debt refunding gives us an additional $2 million this year. Is our debt refund going to be there next year?
Yes,
So it will be $2 million again?
yes. The way we staggered our debt, if you,
When does that disappear, the debt refunding? Yes, when does that disappear?
well, we did a 15-year debt for the new facility. So if you recall, when we issued our debt, we're trying to keep our debt stable. So right now, when we refinance, we're paying about $2.3 million on our debt right now. Our old debt, our prior to 2005, that was refinanced at $2 million, that'll be off the books in 2021. So that's a $2 million payment through that. What we're doing correspondingly is we have $300,000 payments for our new building. When that 2021 comes around, that $2 million comes off the books, but that $300,000 jumps all the way back up to $2 million because we need to pay back that $10 million that we borrowed for the facility. So over the next 15 years, our debt ratio will remain close to that $2 million, give or take interest. Okay, page 20. Just wanted to point out a trend because this is one of those things that when you do your calculations in terms of your levy limit, it has an impact on that percentage, but you can see 2008, we started to have the decline in the values, and you'll see starting back from 2016, we've been inching up in a positive direction, which is a good trend for us. So I just wanted to point that out. That's one of those things we should track. Likewise, if you look at the tax levy on the next page, you can kind of see what we're doing in terms of spending. So that gives you an idea in terms of our trends, in terms of our spending. Likewise, you go to the next page, you can look at the tax rate. And you can kind of see how that tax rate has been also increasing. Then if you go to, actually 2 pages in, then if you go to page 24 of your budget, I guess one common question is how are we spending those dollars and where are they allocated? So when we do the budget, there's general accounting principles that we actually assign to where departments fall into broad categories. And then you can actually see how the budget is spent by the functionality. So again, for example, you look at public safety, 37.75. Our, what we consider parks, land conservation, land use services, 6.56, et cetera. You can kind of see those expenses. But again, I think it's a good way to actually show how the tax or how the counties actually function in providing those services and how we're moving forward. Again, and then this last 2 items, again, beyond that book then, and it goes in, you know, department by department in terms of all their budget expenses. My goal is not to go through all that. But again, just as a reminder, on page 71, although it's summarized in my memo, we have the summary of our KIP, or our capital improvement projects, budgeted for 2018. And then one item I always like to point out then likewise is then starting on page 73, we have a list of all of our capital projects. So anything that's in terms of our IS outlay and other, it goes all the way through our vehicle replacement fund, that's all itemized in there. And again, if there's specific questions, I can do that, but my main goal today was just to highlight this kind of how the budget book's put together. Just 2 other things just to point out. Well, one is actually a thanks to both Mark and Steve for putting together the budget book. They do a lot of work to make this happen. I'd like to say I did it all, but it's actually their work behind the scenes that makes this all come together. And then just the last statement, in terms of the budget, again, what we're trying to do as a county is we're trying to put ourselves in a strong position moving forward. As you know, I worked extensively with Mark in trying to put together a model that actually tries to look out into the future, and we're trying to account for our own growth and the way we provide services. And I really feel pretty confident that this budget helps us go in that direction. So again, I think it's a very good budget, both financially and how we're using our funds and how we're moving forward. And I think it does put us in a good position for providing services not only for 2018, but also for how we move forward and try to address growing into our levy limit and how we are addressing and moving forward with our services in the future. So with that, I'll leave it at that. If there's any specific questions, I'm available, or likewise, Mark, I can call Mark up to rescue me as well. So,
Steve?
I had a question. Could you explain the increase in museum and what that entails?
sure.
What the plan is?
So, okay, so the museum, there's a good question there. So under the museum, you'll see that we have a 106.51% increase. So this is an interesting one. So our museum has been very lucky in the sense that we have several individuals who are working just as part-time, no benefits, but are actually running our museum. And we're spending probably about $47,000 a year, historically, if we went back in our trends, with our museum. This past year, we funded a strategic plan, and in that strategic plan, it's suggesting ways for us to, in the future, move forward with the museum. Part of the goal was that maybe try to move towards that in 2018. So what we did is we actually put in an extra $50,000 in the budget towards the museum. With the thought of the process is that right now our funding is about $50,000, as I mentioned. That long term, if you look at where we want to be, long term, we're looking at the funding level of around 100,000, maybe 120,000 at the max for our museum for future operations. So I guess in this sense, the budget came a little bit faster than what the strategic plan is doing. So I don't see us, I guess, leveraging all those funds this year. But I think it's a good trend of showing that in the future, for us to maintain the museum, we're going to have to, I guess, throw some additional dollars at it.
In reference to the museum, then, if we don't leverage all the funds, what will happen to the remaining funds?
The funds in the budget, so if we don't do anything with the museum, and let's say the status quo for the entire year, anything that's left in there goes back into our general fund.
It's been a very frugally run place.
It has been, and that's what we're trying to do with the planning for the museum. And again, we just had a meeting yesterday, so we met with the consultants. I think we have a good plan moving forward. It's just a matter of timing of rolling that out. And I think right now the committee, if they want to back me on this one, is pretty comfortable with us moving forward and putting together a comprehensive plan in 2018 and maybe making some initial changes for how we're going to operate in 2019. But I think the full implementation would probably be first in 2019.
Piz?
In regards to the tax rate, last year was 4.0634, and for 18, we're talking 4.1257, or an increase of 0.623. Is it fair to say that most of that 0.623 increase is a result of public safety? Maybe not all of it, but most of it is a result of public safety increase?
Piz, can you give me the page that you're on to show me what number you're looking at? I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right number with you.
Well, I'm on page 22, and right at the top, the 17 tax rate versus what we're looking at for 18. And then what I'm going on is the next page, 23, is public safety increase is 37.75%. And because they're under Act 10 exempt, you know, on the increase, isn't most of that 0.623, a lot of that is a result of public safety?
Well, I think the best thing to do, and I hope, I don't know if Mark's running some numbers for me, but on page 10, I guess you can see the actual numbers themselves. So the tax levy outside of our, what I consider above, what we consider the ambulance and bridge aid, in 2017 is 25,192,834. And then now what our proposed in 2018 is 25,598. So we're looking at approximately $500,000 increases within our general government expenses overall. Now that's our tax levy portion. Likewise, if you go down, then if you go total outside the cap, you're going from 3.118 to 924 to 3.356. So that's about a $250,000 increase. So percentage-wise, I'd say, yes, that accounts for a large percent of the increase, but it doesn't account for, obviously, all of that percentage.
Well, often constituents ask, why did it go up? And, you want to give them a fair answer of why there was that increase. And I don't know how much, it's definitely not all of that .623 increase, but probably a good portion of it is because of the public safety.
Correct.
Which is the EMS and the medical examiner and the sheriff.
Correct. That is true. That is true.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Steve?
One other question, maybe slash comment, on the UW extension. I thought the intent was costs were gonna go down with the reorganization, but I guess apparently the costs for the local municipalities is going up, but it's gonna save the UW some money, is that what I?
Okay, so I'll cover the UW and I'll do the short version. And this one probably, well, my committee members can back me. This one's been very frustrating. So I will be 100% honest on this one. We are paying more for less. That's the only way we can explain it. So in essence, what we did is we're pretty much doing a status quo budget for UW Extension. Where that 3% increase comes in is, it is for the positions themselves. Mainly what the best way I can sum it up is, traditionally in the past, we would pay 40% of the staffing cost, and they would pay the 60%. What they did is they came out with a flat fee rate now for the positions. If you happen to do the numbers, it actually, in my mind, kind of shifts the cost to where we're paying probably more 60% and they're paying 40%. So really what we did in our budget is we're funding 3 of our staff still at full time. And then what our community development agent, that used to be held by Rob Burke, he actually left and he became the area manager. So Rob Burke's position is actually vacant right now, but we only budgeted that position as a part-time position. In other words, we either would share it or we'd only have part-time. Even with budgeting that at a part-time position, our new numbers, because we're paying 60% of the other salaries plus 60% of even that half, it actually puts us that 3% over with that. So it's one of those things where, and there's no other way I can say it, we're paying more for less because we're losing a staff person, at least a half-time for sure. And it's just the way the UW model is working right now for their programs. I can tell you that just in our meeting with the committee, we are looking at partners with Kiwani, and obviously we'll look at Brown and other ones, but we are looking for ways to either continue the sheriff staff or look for other options for that. But it is one of those things where the communications are very infrequent, and unfortunately, we've kind of been told what we're going to do versus really having a dialogue of what we can do. So that's the unfortunate part.
It brings me into something that I mentioned at Board of Health last night, because we talk about new programs in our various committees, new programs that we can take advantage of. And if anybody really went through the budget, you can see that our intergovernmental revenues in a lot of budgets are going down, but our services are remaining constant, and that's something we have to be cognizant of. Is if we're going to take on new programs, if they're going to become unfunded, are we going to continue to offer those programs, or are we going to cut back on the service? So it's just something for everybody to keep in mind when they're looking at new unfunded mandates. So.
Correct.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Ken. Okay. We're now going to reconvene as the county board and act on the 2018 Door County budget. So I need I'll make a motion that we reconvene as the county board.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we're going to start with the supervisor compensation and reimbursement
Please.
resolution.
So this, I just wanted to, let me just get caught up.
Wait. Would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2017-70, Mr. Chairman.
Or a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
No, I just wanted to have these, the next two items, I guess, prior to the budget, because if there were changes, that way we could address it as part of the budget itself, but that's the only comment I wanted to make, so we can proceed.
Okay. So the changes, this is on page 3 through 6 on your Surface package. The changes that are in here are highlighted in yellow. They're all changes that we agreed to at our last meeting. It went back to administrative committee to finalize it and put it in here. So if we want to just walk through this quickly, if there's any questions. So I'll just go through the highlighted pieces. It'll be in full force and effect on and after April 17th, 2018. Down under item 1C, request for payment should not be submitted and payment will not be authorized unless the requester has attended at least 30 minutes of the meeting. Item number 2, the daily per diem rate for the county board meeting is $150. That remains the same. The $225 per day is the same as it has been, and basically everything's staying the same, okay? Including the meetings that are listed below, and I want to point out that includes the WCA annual conference, the legislative exchange is at $225, and the biannual Door County legislative days. In item number 3, it's $25 an hour for all other conferences in attendance, up to a maximum of $200 per day. For conventions, institutes, meetings, schools, training that's been approved through the budget process or been appropriated for their attendance if it was not in the budget, meaning it went back through both administrative committee and finance committee to be approved. Dave?
I'm going to make the presumption that the approval does not necessarily mean that that particular conference or training must be listed in the budget. It's just approved within the dollar values for the committee.
Yes.
Okay, so you run out of the money, then that's it for the year.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if you run out of money and there's a conference or training somebody wants to attend,
Then you need to move on to the next
you
step.
need to come back up through administrative committee and finance.
Yep.
Down, item number 5, supervisor only received compensation one day, I'm sorry, for the county board. If there's other meetings that day, it doesn't, it's only for that county board per diem. There's no additional pay. Down on page 6, mileage reimbursement to be calculated from supervisor's residence or their work location within Door County. If the work location is outside of Door County, mileage reimbursement will be calculated from the county line. And item B, we restated that at the going rate. And those were the changes that we were asked to discuss and come back to you with. Any discussion, questions about that? Dave?
Just a few comments. If you go to page 2 of that group of 4, underneath 3A1, each supervisor, and this is a grammatical issue for me, each supervisor shall receive mileage for each mile traveled and going to and returning from. Historically, that would imply the mere fact that you traveled, when in reality it's for each mile that you actually drove your personal vehicle, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Though verbally, that's not what it says here in the ordinance or in the document.
What would you like it to say?
What's a more appropriate set of words, really? I mean, in my mind, it's each mile traveled in your own personal vehicle, or a non-county vehicle, or driven in your own personal vehicle. I don't know, I know that verbiage is used more often in someplace else, but I can't think of what the verbiage would be. Nothing came to me that made sense. Because quite often we go to the places where, you know, people share a ride together, either take, you know, but as written, that's not the way you get paid.
the very least,
could
each
do-
mile driven in personal vehicle,
Each supervisor who drives their own vehicle,
or a personal vehicle.
drives a personal vehicle.
Okay, that'd be simple. Each supervisor who drives their personal vehicle.
Shall receive.
Yep.
Make sense? Okay. Linda?
Going back to compensation at the top of page 5, number 3,
Yes.
the highlighted funds have been appropriated for attendance. So it's my understanding that county board supervisor per diems have been lumped into, excuse me, salary and wages for each department. So I assume that will be tracked internally as far as what is being spent for county board supervisors attending
Right.
committee meetings.
Per committee, yes.
Yep.
Correct. Just for reference, in each budget, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's actually 2 lines that were added. One is for, I guess, the salary related to the meeting itself, and then there's also a line set up for what we consider travel or conferences related to that. So both of those lines you can track at whatever time you have. Oh, Mark's going to correct me. Maybe I did that wrong.
Not a correction at all, simply a clarification. What Ken said is right. Linda had asked a question earlier based on what was in the budget book. And again, what you have in the budget book is a synopsis of each department's budget reduced to, somewhere around between 12 and 24 lines. But some of these budgets go on for page after page after page. So it is included in what's shown as salary and wages, but there are specific accounts included in each department for each committee, one for mileage and one for per diems. So it is possible to very easily track what is being spent there. In your budget book, however, it's simply shown in a very summarized fashion.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to go to voter board, and this is to vote on the supervisor compensation reimbursement resolution as amended.
Mike,
Come on.
That has passed 20 yes, 1 no. Resolution 2017-71, Door County Performance-Based Compensation System. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
For a second?
Second.
Sure. Just to provide an explanation, if you recall, or if you don't recall, we have a method within the county right now. We call it our performance-based evaluations. So on an employee's anniversary date, there is a software package that we use to complete an evaluation. And for those core competencies, they get scored within the system. And then what happens when they get scored, it kicks out an average number at the end. And at the end, then they fall into a category which is shown on, I guess, page 8, or the attachment, the addendum A. And based off of that, they would get a matching potential increase. So if an employee is within what we call the steps of ours, which is the step 1 to step 6, or what's called the control point, or actually just below the control point, they qualify what we call for a step increase. So in other words, they do a step from wherever they're at to the next step. If they are in what we consider the control point, in other words, 100%, or they go to that 114.99, you can qualify for an increase that ranges from 1.75 all the way up to 2.5%. Likewise, if you're actually above what we consider the max, which is 115%, they can still qualify what we call for a, in essence, what I consider almost like a bonus payment. In other words, it does not add on to their base of their salary, but they can qualify for that percentage up to the max that you see listed there in terms of a bonus, in essence. The one question that was asked at admin, if you recall, we had a new pay plan that was put together by Carlson Detman right now, when that was adopted and put in place, we feel that the pay plan itself is still accurate. So in essence, the pay plan is not, if you recall, sometimes we actually age the plan. And by aging the plan, in other words, we try to account for the market conditions or similar to what inflation would be impacting the pay plan, so it stays current. In working with that, our pay plan, we feel is still current or accurate. But again, just in terms of, not to say that we're trying to keep up with everyone, but we're trying to keep up with what the, I guess, common increases are throughout the state. And again, I explained that to admin. They're ranging anywhere from like the 1.75 all the way up to 3%. So we felt that this was, in this case, each year, if you recall, we adopt these based off what we think is not only fair within the market, but fair for our employees. And we feel that this would be the base to be for 2018 for our plan.
Any questions? Dave?
At the Wisconsin Counties Association Convention, one of the breakout sessions dealt with negotiations and contracts, and the law firm, I don't recall which it was doing the presentation. And they were suggesting that perhaps it's counties should consider giving a cent per hour increase in some of the negotiations versus a percentage, whether it be 25, 50, 75 cents or something. Might this be a place to consider something like that in the future?
Can you say that again? There's been a flat...
A flat dollar amount, whether it be 50 cents, a dollar, whatever you consider per hour.
Oh, sure, yep.
Okay, versus a
Okay, I
percentage
understand that. Yeah,
of
I'm
their
sorry.
pay.
Yep.
Because the spread continues to get larger between the top-end salaries and the workers in that department.
Oh, okay, I think it... That is
Something that's kind of been outside of negotiations, and the law firm was saying, start taking a look at this.
Right. And actually, that is a good point, because I actually went to that same session. We went to that in Stevens Point. And actually, I'd say that applies not only for our, I guess, our two union groups that we have, but I think it also applies across the organization. That's one thing that,
It does.
that applies across. Because there's two ways of looking at it. Is one is that if you have, again, if you mathematically, they always say if you continue to do 2% at the top one, it's a growing, it accelerates.
Right.
Likewise, though, that's hopefully that's based off the performance, so hopefully that accounts for a little bit of that difference. But the other part also, too, is that we're also seeing, I guess the other part of the argument we need to watch is what's called compression. So in other words, it's when our contracts actually have negotiated increases that are, I guess, increasing faster than what our non-represented employees are getting. But the compression actually applies to the supervisors within that department. So those are all valid points, and we definitely watch for that, and that's one of the things we'll definitely have to look at in the future. So I guess I'm agreeing with you, but I'm just trying to clarify different ways of looking at it.
I wasn't suggesting that this is like, a place where you need to apply it, but it's a consideration that needs to be taken into the overall look at salaries.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda?
And this only applies to salaried positions, not hourly wages?
No, because it depends where they are in the pay plan. So we have both salaried and non-salaried individuals that fall within the pay plan. So depending on where they fall in the pay plan, they would follow this process.
So wage-based employees would also fall under performance-based compensation system?
Correct.
Because I'm looking at paragraph 2 where it says changes to base salaries, step and performance increases, and discretionary merit. So step and performance, like you said, includes employees paid hourly as well as salary.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and we don't need to spell that out in here.
Correct.
Anybody else? Okay. We'll go to the voter board. That's 21 yes, 1 abstention. Resolution 2017-69, the 2018 budget and tax levy. Mr. Fisher, would you care to make a motion?
Well, certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would like to make a motion we adopt Resolution 2017-69, the 2018 budget and tax levy.
Kathy, would you care to second that?
Come to think of it, Mr. Chairman, Kathy's the chairman of the Finance Committee. Maybe she should make the motion and I should second it?
This was
Perfectly
submitted
appropriate.
by David as the chairman, so.
Okay, I didn't want to step on any toes.
No, no.
Okay.
That'll be the third. Okay, any discussion? If not, we'll go. John?
I'd like to go back to page 3 of our budget. We got a number there, 1.53%. That's our tax rate. There's also a number on there of 2.77, what we could charge. And then if we go in this resolution, we got a number of 2.27. We got 3 numbers. Which one are we working with?
Where's he looking at?
On the resolution, where are you looking at on the resolution, John?
Fiscal impact.
Financial impact. There's a number there of 2.27 over 2017.
Oh, John, I see what you're saying. Okay, so the 2.27, if you look at my same page, that is the total tax levy. So that is correct, the 2.27. The 2.77 is what we could additionally levy. In other words, we could levy more, and those aren't the same
That
references.
part I got, but the 1.53 and the 2.27.
Okay, so there's 2 different calculations, and that's why I wanted to show that. The calculation for your tax levy is based on what you're taxing versus your equalized value. So that's why I showed you the chart. If your equalized value goes up, that affects your percentage change. So when our equalized value goes up, that helps us because it keeps our tax levy percentage, I guess, going down, hopefully. If it remained flat, then that 2.27 would actually be up a lot higher. What's considered your tax rate, and that's why I want to put that one, is your tax rate. So in other words, when you get your tax bill is actually changing from the $4.06, decimal points carried out, is changing to $4.12, which is actually the 1.53%. So both of those numbers are correct. If you're looking at your tax levy, it is changing 2.27% because your tax levy is based off your comparison to the equalized value. If you're looking at your tax rate, though, your tax rate is changing the 1.53%. So both of those numbers are actually valid. It's just a matter of how they compare the numbers. And if I didn't explain that any better, I'll need Mark's help because he can probably do it a little bit better than I could. But they are both valid numbers.
Further explanation, John?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to explain to somebody what their tax rate went up.
Well, I guess the best way I do is that's why I try to explain it. If that's why we put them down both. I mean, if I'm a taxpayer, the fact that our tax levy is a 2.2 does not actually equate to what your tax bill impact is. So for the common resident, they're going to open up their tax bill and they're going to look at the $4.12 and they're going to say, okay, it went up, and it went up 1.53%. That's the best way for a citizen to probably understand it because when they open their tax bill, that's what they're looking at. I don't know, Mark, do you want to clarify that further?
Yeah, I guess what I'd say is the 2.27% compares the total amount levied, the $28,954,000 compared to what was levied last year, the $28,311,000. So the total amount levied across everybody went up by 2.27%. But because of new construction, because of the increases in the equalized value, the tax rate per $1,000 of equalized value only went up 1.53%. So in one case, we're talking about the total amount levied. In the other case, we're talking about the rate per $1,000 of taxes. And again, part of that is that increase is being absorbed by new construction, which hadn't been there for 2017. Also, those whose equalized value went up would be paying a slightly higher portion because their equalized value went up. Likewise, someone whose equalized value that went down would be based on a smaller base times that 1.53% increase in the rate. I don't know if that helps or not.
Basically, we went up 6 cents per thousand.
Correct.
We have more people sharing.
Okay, so let me get this.
As well you should.
So to get a 2.27% increase in tax levy money, the rate has to be raised 1.53%.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep, you got her.
Anybody else? If not, we'll go to the voter board. That has passed 17 yes, 4 no.
I'm sorry?
We'll do the two resolutions. Yeah. Resolution 2017-72, purchase of truck chassis, dump body, and snow equipment, Highway Department. John?
Yes, I make a motion to approve Resolution 2017/73.
Second.
72.
22, okay.
Second.
Yeah, this is in front of us because according to a policy, just a minute till I get my papers here. Resolution 43/96, equipment purchase that exceeds $100,000 required county board approval. And this exceeds $100,000. This is not new money, this is money's in the CIP, the money's there. It's just that it's a formality that we have to go through.
Questions? Not, we'll go to the voter board.
Work? No. One more time.
John?
He's not voting.
That has passed 21 yes. Resolution 2017-73, committee
I
appointments.
counted once.
Move to
Mr.
approve.
I'll second that.
Just a quick explanation. We have some of the terms that are expiring in December of 2017. I do know that we have, obviously, April elections, and we'll have to go through this whole process again, but during that window, we do need to make our, I guess, our traditional appointments. And those you'll see are for the Human Services Board, the Library Board, our Veteran Service Commission, the Door County Housing Authority, and also our new one, if you recall, we have our, we approved the resolution to actually join PACE, which is that energy program. And there's supposed to be one member that would sit on that board, and David Engel was recommended by, in this case, it was David.
That's the reason.
What does he know? What does he know about energy?
Zero. Not a clue.
Any questions?
That's why that makes me a good choice.
Low energy.
Not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're going to recess now and move to the annual Door County Fair meeting. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Back, call it 10:05.
Okay, we'll call the annual meeting of the Door County Fair to order at approximately 10:07. We'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Miller. Can you guys raise your hands, please, so we can keep up, and second by Engelbert. Motion was made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll look for the minutes from the past meeting were attached in your packets. We'll look for approval of the minutes of the 2016 annual meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got those? Halsted first, Engel second. Motion was made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Presentation of annual reports. Item A is the financial report, also in your packet. Quick review of the financial report. This year, we had showed a income of $82,329. A lot of that is due to the $170,000 that the county board approved for us last year. The breakdown of the revenues and expenses is on page 4 of 16. We had $182,833.86 of expenditures, and we took in a revenue of $265,102.17. Page 5 highlight will show your attendance for the year. We had 206 exhibitor passes, 8,863 daily passes, 1,560 booster buttons. When you multiply the booster buttons times 4, which is the formula for calculation for the state, our attendance increased this year up to 15,927. And then by detail in the back is a list of all the detailed checks that were written. Do we have any questions on the financial report? Linda?
The minutes from last year reflected that you were going to change an advertising vendor, and then I noticed that the advertising costs actually increased substantially. Do you feel like you got your money's worth?
Yeah, absolutely. This year we contracted with Tweak Social Media.
I saw.
And I think that was a bit better bang for our dollars. We also gave us some more money to spend in other ways on other news, radio, and whatnot, so.
Good.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve.
Solons?
Second.
Lundell? A motion was made and second to approve the financial report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The department premium report is also in your packet. I think it's the last page in your packet. You'll see the comparisons of 2016 and 2017. You'll see that our open class premiums went up, reflecting that we had a few more exhibits in the open class, and our junior fair still held pretty steady. So overall, we had a net increase of just shy of $300 of, or around $300 of premiums paid. So we'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. Second it.
Stiddy, second, and who was the first? Oh,
Laura.
Laura Wadchick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Oral comments of the 2017 fair. First off, I'd like to recognize Donna, sitting next to me here, for her 47 years of service for the Door County Fair.
She's that old?
She is retiring. Well, we do obviously bring her back as needed, and we hope that I'm sure that we will ask her to assist us in some ways throughout the year, and I'm sure she'll help us. So again, I'd like to recognize her for 47 years of service to the Door County Fair.
Page.
Also, I'd like to thank the county board as a whole for your support over the last year and a half with our proposal of how to try to turn the Door County Fair around and make things move to the better for us as a whole. Your support has been appreciated. If you remember back about a year or so, a little over a year ago, I presented a 5-year plan on how to bring the fair back on the track, and I'm happy to let you know that we are well on our way into that 5-year plan. In 2016, our attendance was only 8,000 people, and last year we were just shy of 16,000 people. So your support of money to allow us to lower our prices, bring back the booster buttons, was all a huge success. You know, the downside of our 2017 fair, we did have a couple days of rain where we had to cancel some events. or it could even have been a bigger success as well. So as a whole, we are moving forward with the 2018 fair, scheduling it to be similar and maybe even better. Obviously, we can't stay stagnant. We have to keep improving in our marketing and our attractions that we bring in. So we are full steam ahead, and we, again, thank you for your support. The dates for the 2018 fair is August 1 through 5 of 2018. Do we need to act on that as a board, or no? Not really. No? Okay. So moving on to item 6, slate of proposed officers. On your agenda, you'll see the slate of proposed officers. Myself as president, Thad Ash vice president, Steve Jennerjohn treasurer, Sarah Miller as secretary, Tim Ash member at large, John White member at large, and Dawn Vandervoort is the educational liaison from the UW Extension Office. With that, is there any other nominations from the floor?
I'll make a motion that we cast a unanimous ballot for the officers listed.
I'll second that.
Second by Fisher. Motion is made and second to cast the unanimous ballot for the proposed officers. Any other discussion?
Just one comment that was brought up about looking for another board member. Had you had that discussion at all, or?
Well, we haven't met. We met in a couple days, but we have had this discussion over the years. And again, it's just not a long line of people knocking on our door to be part of it. So
Yep.
we're always open to that. We're always open to help from the public. So we'll cross that bridge as we can. So, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Questions and answers. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Am I missing something here? The statement of activities, page 4 of 16 here that I've got. You sold booster buttons, correct?
Yes.
I don't see them listed here in revenues.
They
Are
would.
they inclusive of the 170?
Nope. They would.
Saw them on there.
They would be in the gate receipts, because that is like an attendance item, so it's mixed in with the daily gate, and the booster button sales are under gate receipts, which would be your 4th item down. That'd be the revenue of $69,775.
So in 2014, you had gate receipts of 104,000, and it's gone down considerably. And in 2017, it was 69,775. Yet the attendance was way up, you said?
Yep. You remember, we went down to a $5 admittance from where the admittance in the past was $12 to $13. So we went down in our admittance, and we went down, or we brought back the booster button. And part of that 5-year plan that was presented last year was to lower the price, get back to people coming to the fair, and then we'll work through that slight increase as we can over the years to get back up to where we were.
Okay, so you feel now that you're going to start moving in the right direction so we can start coming off that 170? I know we're...
Correct. This year's proposed budget, or that you're, helping us with, is 122,000 or 121,000, I believe, down from the 170.
Yep. And
So we are taking the 80,000 roughly that we had for revenue, and we're sticking it back into the 2018 fair.
Okay. So we are, you as an organization are hoping to continue to keep reducing that
Correct.
amount that
Correct.
the county puts in for you.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ofsted.
Are you subsidizing or planning on subsidizing the 2018 fair with money from your savings account?
Yes, as I just
Okay,
stated.
well, what's the savings, are you going to eventually run out of money like that?
No.
Or is the savings account increasing?
Nope, the savings account will increase by a few $1,000s this year. I think we're sticking $79,000 in our proposed budget that the property committee will be seeing here soon, but and we took in 83. So, you know, we're holding our savings somewhere around $45,000.
Okay.
And that money is kind of used as, right now, we're actually signing contracts and getting things ready for the fair. So we use that pool of money to get those things rolling. Any other, yep, Linda?
I think last year you indicated that 2017 was the final of the 3-year contract with the carnival vendor. Are you renewing this year, or you're not?
Well,
Haven't discussed that.
That was fairly interesting. So last year, that was the case. Then we went to our annual fair convention in Wisconsin Dells. When we went to the convention, we found out at the convention that that carnival went bankrupt and is no longer in service.
Whoops.
So we had no carnival for 2018, and we scrambled through the convention, or 2017, and so we scrambled through the convention to get a new contract, carnival under contract for a 3-year term at a lower price. So we do have a new carnival, and we have them for 2 more years, so. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Halsted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, the 2018 Rules of Order of Standing and Special Committees. Again, this was a redo and reaffirmation of the various rules of committees that everybody took a look at over a period of many months. Changes were highlighted. Any questions? Dave?
Page 16, it references a web page that is severely out of date. Very top, second line. So can we either update that or remove it completely?
Oh, yeah.
You know, the actual document is out of date
Right.
also. I'd like to just see it wiped out completely, because that's a floating, I mean,
Yeah,
it
can
only
be
affects
removed.
21 individuals, so.
It can be removed. Anything else? Could we have a motion and a second to approve that?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
2018 Rules of Order governing the Door County Board of Supervisors, beginning on page 18. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve those rules of order governing the Door County Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any discussion?
Me again.
Dave, go ahead.
Page 19, underneath 8, we have added a per diem code entry. Does that need to be in there? If we're going to continue going that route?
Good idea.
We can do that. That's easily done.
Only if
Yeah.
we're going to stay that route. And then obviously for standing committees, it'd be the same thing. I don't know if we have a list of those.
Anything else? All right, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And beginning on page 24, duties of committees. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Dave, any remarks on that one?
Nope. Well, you know, those kinds of things just stand out for me.
Anybody else? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ordinances, 2017-12, amendment of Chapter 11.5 Door County Code, all-terrain vehicles and utility terrain vehicle routes. John?
I move for approval of ordinance 2017-12.
I'll second that.
This was brought to us by the town of Forestville. They wish to be added to the ATV trails that we have in the southern end of the county. We reviewed it at the Highway Committee, and it affects County H, which we seen absolutely no problem. So I'm recommending we approve it and add it to the rest of that we already have approved.
Any questions? Dave?
That's my day. And I want to make sure I understand this correctly, because any of these devices used for farming, as an example, already has authority to be on the road in the first place. So this is intended for private recreational purposes, correct? Because farming aspects, they have approval to be on the road as it is.
That's correct.
Well, I'll explain this and make it as clear as mud. We had a Highway Safety Commission meeting one time. We had the DOT there. We had the State Patrol there. We had the sheriff there. We had anybody and everybody you could imagine, and we asked them all kinds of these questions, and nobody could agree on anything. So we had Grant Thomas put this ordinance together, which I kind of protects us, and it doesn't cost us anything. And to get that answer, I don't have an answer for you. I don't really know. You can go on the ice with a tractor. You don't need a license, but you can't go on the ice with a four-wheeler. You need a license. That's how far you can go with this. Unreasonable.
Steve?
One comment I'd make to you, Dave, kind of to your question, is the farming thing is very, it can be disproved or proved. I mean, the way the DNR has it written. So, I mean, I know of people that have used it for farming but have gotten stopped and maybe haven't gotten a fine but gotten warned, don't do it again. So it's not real clear, you know, the definition of what you have to abide by to be using it for farming, to be on the road, so.
And the other side of that is people that have nothing to do with farms have done exactly the same thing and got stopped, said that they were using it for farming, and yet, you know, they obviously were not. You know, so I just want to make sure it's clear that in my mind it's intended more of a recreational tie than it is a functional operational tie.
John?
There should be one clarification. It states on a trail, the trails run on private property or in state lands, county lands. That's considered a trail, not a paved road. A route is considered something that you're going from point A from one road to another to get to a trail. And there are certain requirements on those laws that require it to be listed as a route versus a trail. So I think we should consider being careful under those terms. The State Department of Natural Resources does put out a good publication for governmental bodies on how to proceed and what to classify what you're doing as versus, you know, trail versus a route, et cetera, so people don't become confused.
Roy?
Yes, just to expound on John's comment, this will only be able to use unless it's properly marked, and there's set requirements for the size of the sign and how far they're apart. So that's when that route can be used only if it's properly marked. And the Southern Door Business Association has agreed to mark this trail with the proper signage.
Dan?
Well, I guess one of my problems with this is that we allow bicycles on any road at any time, and they're sometimes a lot more dangerous than these 4x4s, and I question why we have to, I know it's not up, you know, it's more of a state statute, but darn bicyclists are dangerous too.
If I can go back to the real history of starting this, it started in the town of Union, and it was when the local person in Union wanted to go ice fishing, and he wanted to drive on the road. And he had to put his chainsaw and his axe in his four-wheeler with his 4 fishing buckets and his fishing poles. And the Sheriff Vogel at that time says to me, why don't you just let him go on there rather than us stopping him and making him lie to us and tell us that he's farming? And this is where the original thing came from, and this is what it has mushroomed into.
And my dilemma is if you go to Northern Door, four-wheelers are all over the roads, and they're used just like cars to go from bar to bar, to grocery store, from work to home. And they're not always the most agreeable vehicle as is bicycles on the road at the same time. And I just don't want to, I would appreciate not seeing this mushroom out into a regular use of a vehicle that doesn't work well on roads.
John?
If the town doesn't bring this forward to us, it's not going to be here. This comes from the town.
I recognize
The county highway department doesn't have a dog in this fight, as we say.
Joel?
Well, I expand on a comment because at the end of the day, no matter what the towns or the county approves to be ridden on, the riders still have to follow state law and DNR rules and regulations. So the burden is then on the DNR, or the Sheriff's Department, or the State Patrol to find them if they're doing illegal activities. It's not the nature of the people, whether or not they can do it or not, it's whether or not doing it legally and following the rules.
Done.
The only comment I'm going to make is that the town of Bailey's Harbor is also looking at doing something exactly like this, so be prepared.
And they were called Yugos when you were doing that.
Okay, anybody else? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
It's an ordinance.
It's an ordinance.
Oh,
you gotta vote
ordinance,
on
we
it.
have to go to the roll call.
No.
You were just practicing. Poor John.
Thank you, John.
Oh, and a side note, they also don't pay road tax,
Neither do bicycles.
as somebody mentioned about electric cars.
Pay gas tax.
No, they don't.
But they're all
Have to.
registered. Bicycles don't pay anything.
Farmers.
Okay, we need to finish voting, please.
They don't have to.
Let's try again.
Yeah.
That has passed 20 yes, 1 absent. Thank you. New business. Election of Civil Service Commissioner. Joe Wadier, new term expires December 2022.
So yeah, this is, again, as it states, our civil service commissioner, and it has to be done through the election process. So, and we did talk with Jim, and he's willing to continue his term.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vouchers, claims, and bills. Next, our county board meetings. A couple of things have come up. We weren't sure if we were going to need a meeting in December of the board, but it turns out we will need a meeting. So we have moved the administrative committee to the 12th of December, and we'd like to move the board to the 19th of December. And it'll be at 10 a.m.
That was my question. Are they both at 10 a.m.?
They'll both be at 10 a.m.
Sorry.
So that Joel can make it from the
That's the
island.
Joel rule.
Yeah, Joel rule.
There we go.
Right. You got-
Fisher rule, that's the Joe rule.
Formerly known as the.
Night shift at 10
Yes,
a.m.?
yes.
That's the date I have it on.
I think 10 is a nice time.
Per diem code for today is 1114.
Surprise.
Only 3 digits. You have 4 digits?
Sure.
You got
Did it
4
last
digits?
month.
11:14.
Have whatever you want.
I thought it was only 4.
One day we'll make it 12.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business to be transacted, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Done.